Small or quick.
All right, so welcome to today's class once again. We are in the week 3, and this is our 5th session. I will be discussing feature prioritization and frameworks. Feature prioritization frameworks in product management. All right, so the table of contents will be: what is prioritization in product management? What are the challenges of prioritization? And several prioritization techniques, such as the Moscow method, the Rice scoring method, the value versus complexity quadrant, the Kano Model, and the weighted scoring prioritization. All right. So we're going to, the question now is, what is prioritization and why is it important in product management? All right. Yeah, I wrote that prioritization in product management involves a systematic approach to deciding which feature/tasks to work on first, that takes into account the value of each feature or task, its cost and complexity, its impact on the customer or on the business. So when you talk about prioritization, you are looking at how to determine what feature, what task to work on first. And when you're looking at that, you have to consider, several things, such as what value is that feature or that task bringing to the, to the business or to the customer. You're looking at the cost, the effort, the complexity in the development of that feature or in that initiative, and you're also looking at the impact. What impact will this feature have on our customer or on our business? So these are the things that you look at, that determines how you prioritize a certain feature. All right. Last class we talked about requirements and gathering your requirements. After you gather your requirements, you want to start, before you start developing, you have to prioritize to know which one you're going to concentrate on first, which one you start working on first. All right. So prioritization is is a very important aspect of product management, and every product manager needs to know how to efficiently and effectively prioritize their features or the tasks that will be assigned to their team or they themselves will be working on for, as regarding the product that they are developing. All right. I would say that the reality of building products is that you can never get everything done, and that's the truth. All right. Priorities will shift, resources are allocated, funding is scarce. A lot of factors and limitations and constraints will always happen that would not would not allow you to work on every possible thing that you can imagine concerning that product. So which then beckons you to the need to prioritize and know what are the important things to focus on. All right. So as a product manager, it is your job, rather our job, to make sure we are working on the most important things first. We need to ruthlessly prioritize features before we run out of resources. All right. Because in fact, I know we talked about, wanting to build stuff and you don't really have the resources and you don't have the team. Even if you're able to get some level of team or several of people that would work on your resources, cost of um, cost of getting a server correctly is pretty expensive. Cost of getting some infrastructure that you need to build your solution can be maybe just scarce or even very costly or things like that. And perhaps you are paying on a monthly basis, subscription basis for some of those infrastructure. So you want to ensure that you are launching fast and getting to the point where you are aiming such that you are not your burn rate is not high. All right. And you're already making profit regardless of the of the cost that you are expenditures that you are spending on your development. All right. So this means you need to be very ruthless, very very focused in how you are prioritizing your futures, all right, such that you don't run out of resources. All right. In product management, prioritization is on a whole other level. All right. For example, now engineers can be telling you that they want feature A, and this would be cool. This would make a difference. And your key stakeholders can be suggesting that they want another feature, you know, included in maybe in your Q1 release or whatever. Maybe your data analyst is also trying to convince you about necessary, another feature that you think is necessary that would help the user to do this and that. All right, and your users also asking for a feature like that. So you have set all part of your team requesting for making a case for a certain feature and things like that. And you also have your roadmap, what you things you initially planned out that you are going to develop in maybe on a high level description that you want to put out for that product. So how do you then decide on what to focus on, which is why you need to be able to prioritize. And the person that does the prioritization is the product manager. All right. At every point, every phase you are prioritizing. Every phase you are prioritizing. Every phase you are prioritizing. All right. Prioritization is an essential part of the product management process and product development. Sometimes it can feel daunting, but for a successful launch, it must be done. All right. Without effective prioritization, product managers risk wasting time and resources on low value features or tasks that doesn't meet the customer or the business need. Effective prioritization means your team is working on things that deliver value, making your customer happy and appropriately spending resources and creating opportunity for business growth. So when you see, so all of these are things that you consider that you look at. All right, is this thing delivering value? Is it making our customer happy? How will this feature help us? How are we going to ensure we are saving on resources, building this feature first? And also, is it creating opportunity in terms of business growth, revenue? Are you making will these resources help you make money? All right, as a business. So those are the things you look at to help you prioritize. All right. So how to prioritize features in product management? First of all, you define the objective, right, which is just clearly defining the goal of the product, what the value it will provide to the customer. Second is identify tasks. Create a list of tasks required to achieve those defined objectives, which we then already talked about it. The task could also be like user stories. It could be, yes, basically your user stories and all, and maybe subtasks and all of that needs to go out. Um, that user stories that pretty much you would require for the outcome that the user wants to accomplish. All right, and then evaluate the tasks. All right, or the user stories. Evaluate each task based on the value to based on the value to the customer and the business, the complexity and the impact. All right. So first of all, you're looking at your customers. What value does it bring? You evaluate it. What value does it bring to the business? What is the complexity? It means that what effort, how much of effort will it take to build this thing? And then the impact. All right. So these are things you look at. Then you then rank it. You rank the tasks based on your evaluation. And prioritize them based on their importance. Reevaluate and adjust. We regularly reevaluate and adjust prioritization based on changing needs of customer and business. So at every point, there's several points in time in your development of your product, there'll be period where there are requests for some requests feature requests and things like that maybe you didn't have at the start of the product development that will come. Then, and this might be based on even as you're doing your user research, you're doing your market research, you start discovering some things that you think that are really important for the business or for your customers. As those new data, those new informations are coming up, and seeing how that would influence your development, you can then start readjusting and reevaluating your prioritization based on those new needs and new All right. So challenges of prioritization. So what are the challenges that comes with prioritization, right? Managing stakeholders' expectation. At least that's even major yourself, in fact, because you are as a product manager, you know that you don't have any direct authority. All your work is by influence. All right, there's no direct authority. All right, you are just influencing your team to get, to build a product or get a result and succeed in terms of, the goal for that product. All right, different stakeholders may have varying priorities. Maybe the management, the engineering team, the marketing team, everyone might have what they think is important and what feature that needs to go out based on what they think or what they. So you need to be able to strike a balance from this. All right, you need to be able to strike a balance based on every expectation that all stakeholders have. All right. Um, Adapting to changing market conditions, right? I think I mentioned that earlier, right? That the market is dynamics and priorities can shift unexpectedly. For example, now when the pandemic hit, Zoom had to quickly reprioritize to cater to massive surge in users. For example, now when the pandemic happened, right? A lot of people were now started having to use Zoom more. And if Zoom did not cater for a more infrastructure to be able to accept that large of surge of users, they might actually shut. I think they even at some point the app shut down. They had to like started working on it to ensure that they could then accommodate the number of people that started using Zoom and all other um, you know video um, was in a conference calling app like that app. All right. So these are things that you consider to help you prioritize on what to focus on. So their emphasis was then on scalability. How can we build a more infrastructure and security for this number of people that we are getting? We are getting. So market needs would and changes in the market condition would definitely affect how you prioritize or reprioritize your futures. All right. We have dealing with limited information. All right. Even in the PM and PMM world, having a strong data-driven team is more often a dream rather than a current reality. All right. So even when there is data, you can't know everything, and that's the truth. You cannot know everything. So sometimes I think there was a challenge. I think I was speaking to someone yesterday, and we talked about was telling me about asking me about one of what was one challenge I experienced when with a particular product I launched, and I spoke about you know a particular product I built for the Ministry of Health Ekiti, all right, for their LMS lab information management system. I think one challenge we experienced was that after we did like not really the major launch, but when we did our pilots, all right, realized that by the time we got the feedback, realized that there was a certain stakeholder that we needed to have considered, and from the beginning that we did not. And the feedback we're getting from that person seems like our how we should have gotten this feedback from the get go to help us, prioritize what we're meant to, features that we're meant to have, put out in that product. So we had to then quickly do some adjustment and all of that, before having the final launch. All right. So because of the absence of that stakeholder whose information was really crucial to the deployment and the of that product, how user get to use it in the field. All right, because one of the challenge was people were the stakeholders we're talking with were more of the stakeholders who really don't do the field work. All right, and we just management managerial stakeholders and things like that. So their information on how how things were done in the field was limited. And if we had gotten someone who was that person who was really who was part of the team on the field would have helped us factor some major important things at the beginning of the product development. All right. So dealing with limited information can be something that can affect your prioritization. All right. And then we have limited resources. All right. Um, Small business. Sorry, give me 1 second. All right, small businesses and startups don't have the luxury of calmly building a lot of small features. All right, because of course there's no resources. Hoping that some of them will improve the product. The less funding the company has, the fewer mistake and or rather iteration it can afford to make when building an MVP or figuring out the product market fit. Do you guys get that? So, if you are a small startup or you're a small startup team trying to build something, all right, you would always obviously want to avoid making any major mistake, all right, while building your MVP. So you have to ensure that you are prioritizing rightly and putting out the most important features out first that would help you get to your product market fit. All right. So what is, I remember, I think I've talked about what product market fit is, right? Product market fit is just having a product that the market is demanding for. Your product has gotten to a point where there's now a lot of demand for your product. That's when you got the market fit, all right? Like the market is just demanding for it. You're not trying to market, of course you're marketing, but it has come to a point where the market is not demanding for your product more than even your marketing at some point. That's when you got into a product market fit. All right. Okay. So biases. All right. People often will lie about their experiences with your product to make you feel comfortable, especially when you're doing your usability test. All right. Which is why it's very important with the kind of questions that you ask, that you ask open-ended questions and not close-ended questions, such that you're not just playing into you're not asking questions that play into your ego so that you feel good about whether you are building and not getting the right information that would help you improve on your product development. So this means that product prioritization can be influenced by biased opinions, having nice to have features as top of the list, and that's the biggest mistake you can have. All right, you can make when you're having nice to have features that are just they're just nice features, but they really don't have any major value. They're not really impacting the direction of your business in any way. So you don't want to make that mistake. All right. And also then next we have the lack of alignment. Lack of alignment. All right. Different teams can have varying opinion as to what is important. All right. What these difference what When these differences are addressed, product prioritization can become a fight between what brings product led growth, more leads, higher net promoter score, better user experience, higher retention, lower churn. So these are some major metrics um, that are really important that your product should capture. But if there's no alignment with your team, all right, in the features that you need that are on the important features, you won't be able to achieve all of these metrics, all right, in terms of more growth, higher net promoter score, more user experience, higher retention, lower churns. Lack of alignment is not the last issue startup phase when prioritizing features. All right. All right. So it's very important that you and all of your team members are aligned on what is important and the features that you need to roll out first. All right. So that's pretty much on all of what prioritization means and the challenges and on around prioritization and product management. All right. So um, this is right there. We have the Moscow method, and this is so we have several frameworks on how we prioritize. We have the Moscow method, We have the right scoring method. We have um, the weight scoring prioritization method. We have several prioritization methods. I think it's almost close to about. We have the Kano method. We have up to, if you check online, it most likely they're getting you to up to 10 or so. So there are several ways people you can prioritize your product. All right. There are several ways. I'm going to, although I didn't add that to this slide, I wanted to list all of the ones that I saw. But these I have about 4 or 5 here that are most popular ones and most used across all, in product management. So the other prioritization method that are not even used for product management, all right, but the ones that are mostly used for product management is the one I have for you guys here, which I myself have used you know several times when prioritizing features. All right. So so before we go there, any questions from what I've talked about? One person? Any question? You guys can hear me, right?
Yes, sir, we can.
Oh, all right. So no question. All right. Okay. So known as the Moscow prioritization technique or the Moscow analysis, right? Product professional use the Moscow method to easily categorize what is important and what is not. This is like the most simple way of prioritization, actually. Very easy, straightforward method, which is the Moscow, right? Must have, the acronym stands for must have, should have, could have, and won't have. All right, so must have is absolutely require, vital requirements. Should have are the high priority features. All right, must have, very vital. Without it, you don't have a product. Right, should have a high priority features. All right, could have a possible option features. Won't have a what will not be implemented. All right, and there are several points you have to have features that you know that we are not doing this. Feature requests that you literally tell the stakeholders and management that we're not doing this. Why? Because it doesn't align to it doesn't allow you to the value that we are trying to bring the customer. It doesn't allow um it doesn't have any impact on the customer, on the business, and maybe the efforts or the complex. There's a lot of complexity in having that product out and all of that. So those are things you look at to get to a point that you just know that this one we're not beating it. There's no need. It's just a nice to have. It doesn't do anything. All right. So this is more of like a breakdown, right? For most of us, you have the non-negotiables. You can also be like your minimum viable product, like the really thing that you need to get the job done. All right. Can't deliver on target dates without this. It could be your must-have would fall into this category as well. Not legal without it. Maybe um is a feature that will make you guys be able to get a permission to be able to do something, to be able to launch or stuff like that. So those are things that will most likely fall your must have. Unsafe without it. All right, security and all of that. You have to look at that as a must have. Without this project is not viable. Meaning that without it, you cannot make money. Without it, you won't make money. All right. All right, so those are the things. So you ask questions like, what happens if this requirement is not met? If the answer is to cancel the project, there is no point implementing it or a solution that does not meet the requirement. All right, then we have to should have. This is important but not vital. Maybe painful to leave out, but the solution is still viable. All right, may need some kind of workaround. All right. It should have maybe differentiated from could have by reviewing the degree of the pain caused by it not being met. So you want to check the degree of what pain or what impact would this have if you didn't have this feature? All right, in terms of business value and in terms of number of people affected. All right, so this is what you help you to determines what should fall in your should have or could have. All right, could have are desirable, not as important as should have. Only do it if there is extra time and budget. You guys get it? Only do it if there's extra time and budget. And won't have means that you won't have the time around on all out of budget. Nice to have, but has no real impact. All right. Some won't have, you might still eventually work on it, but it might be some very, very low priority stuff that you already captured all the major, your must have, should have, and could have. And if you see that you have more time and more resources, you can then, have the won't have. All right. Maximum 60% of effort goes to your must have. Maximum of 80% of total effort and business case goes into your must have and your should have. All right. Maximum of 100% effort goes into the three should have, could have, and your what's it called now? Your could have. So if must have takes 60% and 80% goes into must have and should have, means that 40% goes into should have and 20% goes into could have. And if you have any other time in your hands or resources, you can then focus on the won't have. All right. So I think I already explained everything in that this thing, right? So I said here that these are features that will make or break the future or your product. Without them, your user will not be able to get the value of the product and won't be able to use it. These features are non-negotiable features to launch the product. An easy way to identify the must-have is, like I said, ask the question, what happens if this requirement is not met? If the answer is to cancel the project, then this needs to be labeled as the must-have. All right, then we have the should have. Like I said, important features but are not needed to make the product functional. Think of them as the second priority. There could be enhanced options that address typical use cases. Should have initiative might be as crucial as must have, but are often not as time critical. So these are another use case for you to consider when you're looking at your should have or your must have. It could actually be crucial, but it's not time sensitive. For example, now if you're working on a project that has a timeline, all right, there might be some features that are also important, but in terms of your timeline, know that this one needs to come first, and the ones that needs to come first should be your must have. All right, the other ones that will then be your should have, even though they're quite crucial. All right, but it's not so time critical, based on your timeline. All right, so we have the could have, often seen as nice to have items, not critical but would be welcomed. These are vitamins, not painkillers. Painkillers are things that are actually solving the real pain points. Vitamins are like supplements that just making the app look good or have a more unique experience and things like that. All right. There might be integrations or extensions that enhance user workflow. All right. So could be your could have. And your won't have, these are features that are not worth the time or effort they would require to develop. The effort they would require to develop, right? These features are items considered out of scope, not planned for release into the schedule of the next product delivery. In this box, we classify the least critical features and tasks into the smallest return of investment or value for the customer. So if they fall into the lowest or the smallest return on investment or value to the customer, just put it at won't have. Like I said, you may eventually work on them, but that's if you have a serious spare time or resources or manpower, you can then work on those ones after you focus on the other three. All right. So what are the pros of and the cons of Moscow method? I mean, in Moscow is ideal when looking for a simplified approach, like I mentioned in the beginning. that can involve less technical member of your company and one that can easily categorize the most important features. All right. The cons is now that it's difficult to set the right number of must-have features. So that's the challenge, right? Imagine if you now have a whole lot of must-have, how do you then prioritize when you have a large number of must-have? As a result, your product backlog may end up having so many features that tax the development team. All right, so that's the cons of Moscow method. All right, any question on this before we go to the next one? One person.
I have a question.
All right.
So, what about a situation where you have a whole lot of must-have, and there are things that you have to attend to? How then do
Okay.
you decide you want to
All right.
work on it?
So we're going to look at other methods which would factor this use case. All right. Okay. All right. So let's look at the next kind of method. So we have this method called the Rice scoring method. All right. Rice is an acronym actually. The Rice framework is a straightforward scoring system developed by brilliant product management at Intercom, management team at Intercom. RISE stands for 4 factors that Intercom uses to evaluate product ideas: reach, impact, confidence, and effort. All right, reach, impact, confidence, and effort. All right, so for reach centers the focus on the customer by thinking about how many people will be impacted by the future. All right, so now for your question that you asked, right, when you have a lot of more stuff, right, and then use this rice method to further prioritize if you have a lot of more stuff. So you can then further prioritize, which is why sometimes when you're doing a prioritize, you might find yourself using like 2 to 3 frameworks to get to a point where you know that okay, these are now the core ones to focus on. All right. So if you have a lot of a lot of must have, right, you might then want to then use this rice method, right? So reach centers the focus on the customer by thinking about how many people will be impacted by a feature or release. All right. You can measure this by the number of people who will benefit from a feature in a certain period of time. For example, how many customers will use these features per month? So let's say you now have about 10 to 15 crucial features, right? In terms of looking at the impact, the value, and all of that, you know. But you then want to break it down to okay, how many users will use this feature, each of these feature. So you might want to then rate based on that reach. All right. So now you look at impacts again now. So impacts. So since you've looked at you've thought of the number of people you will reach, then you then think of how they will be affected by this feature. Think about the goal you are trying to reach. It could be to delight the customer, measure in positive review or referral. So you can run a survey or something like that to measure the positive reviews, or maybe run a prototype to get reviews on how this would delight the customer, or the kind of how do you delight or reduce your churn. All right. So Intercom recommend a multiple choice scale for impact. We have 3, 2, 1, and 0.5. 3 for massive impact, 2 for high impact, metal impact, and 1 for medium impact, 0.5 for low impact. And I think there's even one that is 0.25, which is really minimum, as in minimum, so lowest impact. But most time people just use 4. All right. So this is example of how that scoring looks like. All right. You see your project, your future. It can be project or the futures or anything. or tasks that you're looking to prioritize. You look at the reach. How many people will use this feature? Feature 1, you say 450. Feature 2, 2000. Feature 3, 800. The impact, you say 3. It has a massive impact. One has one impact, another one has 2 impacts. Confidence level, we'll talk about that. Confidence level means right, I'll just explain that when we get there. The confidence level, we have 100, 800, 100, 80, 50. We have the effort. This is 2, 4. Then there's the particular calculation you use to calculate the overall score. Like I'm going to show you how that the calculation for that. All right. So we have the confidence, which the percentage expresses. This percentage expresses how secure team members feel about the assessment of the reach and the impact. All right. So even though you've assessed the reach and the impact, ask them what is your confidence? How confident that is your team as regards to how they prioritize this reach and impact. All right. The effect is that it's deprioritizes features that are too risky. All right. Generally, anything above 80 is considered as high confidence score, and anything below 50 is unqualified. All right. So you are looking at risk involved in that feature and all of that. So you look at effort. Considering effort helps you balance the cost and benefits, or the effort, the manpower as well. All right. In an ideal world, everything would be high impact, low effort. All right. Although this is rarely the case, you will need information from everyone involving the engineers, the designers, everyone to calculate effort. All right. So for your effort, you want to think about the amount of work one team member can do in a month. So now you're doing a capacity planning. All right. We'll talk about that when we're looking at agile methodology for product management. So you want to do your capacity planning to know, what effort we require to even put this product out. How many number take an engineer to work on all of these features. All right. All right. So you estimate how much work it would take each team members working on the project, and more time allocated to a project, the higher the reach, the higher the reach, impact, and confidence you take to be able to make it worth the effort. All right. So calculating your RISE score, you already have your number representing each category, right? So the formula is reach plus impact, reach times impact as confidence divided by your effort. All right, that's how you calculate your RISE scoring. So when you're giving the value for each of these guys, then you then use this formula to determine the scoring. So based on the scoring, you can then rank your what's it called? Rank it your futures. You prioritize your futures. And again, interestingly, you might then use RISE and realize that there are still some okay, let's look at the cons and the pros for these ones. So you see what I'm talking about. So the pros for using this framework, it's spreadsheet, it's spreadsheet format and database approach are awesome for data focused team. All right. So if you're a data focused team, it's very good. This method also filters out guesswork and loudest voice factor because of the confidence metrics. All right. So the confidence metrics will help you guys to know how confident you are about this feature. All right. For teams that have high value of hypothesis to test, having a spreadsheet format is quick and scalable. So what's the cons for using this framework, right? RISE format might be hard to digest if your startup team consists mainly of visual thinkers. All right, just visual thinkers, not data focused guys. All right, when you move fast, it's essential to use a format that everyone will be comfortable with. All right. When there are 30 plus possible features for complex products, this becomes a long spreadsheet to digest. All right. So it can then be a bit, daunting when you have like a whole lot of features for complex products. All right. But I remember when I was prioritizing for some feature for a what's this product? What was this product that we were building then? For an HMO kind of product like that, an HMO product like that, yeah. So there were some challenges, not just features. There are some challenges, enhancement as well, features and enhancements, and also some new features that's new, not just this thing, enhancement, yeah, feature enhancement and problems that I wanted to solve. All right. So we wanted to solve and wanted to know how to prioritize on which one should really focus on and all of that. So, but one of the major things that was priority in all of the things we're doing, where we had to consider um, the what's it called, cost, the profitability. So three things were considered: profitability, which was will this particular feature drive revenue for us, or will it bring us revenue? Is it operational efficient? Will it help us with operational efficiency in terms of helping us to be able to, simplify how things are done, either for the user or for the organization? All right. Then there was other thing again that we're looking at, um, other um, other KPIs that we're looking at that pretty much determine how we then prioritize. So even after, but the point I'm going was that even after prioritizing we realize that we're not still confident about how the final scoring, because there were some features that didn't have a high priority but were really important for us to drive revenue. So we had to then use after the scoring to consider another framework, which was Moscow, to know how to then prioritize effectively um to ensure that we have the right prioritization that focus on the most important goals for the business. All right. So next we have the value and the complexity quadrant, or value or effort quadrant, or some people call it impact versus effort quadrant. All right. All right. So this quadrant is a prioritization instrument in form of a matrix. It is a simple two grid with value plotted against the complexity. All right, or impact plotted against the effort. All right. Value is the benefit your customer and the business gets for this feature, and is the feature going to alleviate the customer pain, improve their day-to-day workflow, help them achieve their desired outcome? Also, is the feature going to have a positive impact on the bottom line of your business? So, which is why I said you could call it impact versus effort quadrant. So your complexity or effort is what it takes for your organization to deliver this feature. All right. It's not enough to create feature that your customer love. The feature of the product must also work for your business. Can you afford the cost of building and the provision, the future needs, operational cost, development time, skills? So these are the things that might cost you. Might cost your operational cost, it might cost you development time, skill. Do you have like the necessary skill set, on your team to get this product out? For example, now actually a particular feature requires AI. Does anyone on your team knows how to train AI or develop, you know, an AI, any AI, anything regarding AI? So if you don't have anyone that is skilled in, training or developing AI, you of course you cannot put out you can't put out any feature regarding to AI because you don't have anyone on your team that is skilled in that area. So these are things that you look at: training, technology. Do you have the infrastructure, the technology for you to be able to bring out that future, regardless of the impact that it has or the value is meant to give to your customer, right? So this is what you consider. So if you can get more value with fewer efforts, that is a feature you should prioritize. All right. So you look at a feature that can give you more value and the effort is low. Focus on that one as the main priorities. All right. So this is an example of how the quadrant looks like. You have the value, business value, and the complexity / effort. Right. You have high, you have low, and you have high. So anything that falls in this quadrant is what you focus on. So you have your team. This is not something that you do in silos. It's not just you as a product manager. You can do this with your product management team and even all of your team. And you have all of the features written on a maybe on a paper, and you have this quadrant maybe on your board. You draw it on your board, and you then have everyone think around it and have them put which feature falls on each of these quadrants. So anyone that falls on the high quadrant, that's what you focus on. Anyone that falls on so anyone that falls on a second, this is high business and all right, high business value and high complexity on efforts. Okay, this is low, this is low. All right, so anyone that falls on the high quadrant, you know that this is what you want to focus on. High with low effort. Okay, this is low effort and high. Okay, you want to focus on that. And maybe next you want to focus. Maybe next you want to focus on the ones that have a high impact. All right, and maybe a high effort based on if you guys can actually pull it off. All right, regardless, then you want to then go to that next, and then you then want to focus on anything that has um low business value and low effort. So just based on how you look at what you want to prioritize first, and you just run it based on this quadrant. All right, because context will also matter in terms of what the feature is. So I can't really determine which unless we are talking about a specific feature. All right. So the quadrants created by these metrics are, so we have the upper wing, which we talked about, which is the high upper left. Due to this high value and low complexity, right? These features are low hanging fruit opportunity in your business that must be executed with top priorities. So you can just imagine, right? This a particular feature is or a particular project requires you give you so much value and requires just less effort to get it done. Just work on that and put it out quickly. We have the major project, big bets, potential features, meaning that which is the upper right. All right. These initiatives that fall into this block are big project release. So it means that they have high impact but require a lot of effort. You can still put it off, but it might take you longer time, and might need you to even get more people on board. All right. More people that have the necessary skill set or necessary training, or even cost you in a way that you might need some to get, funding or whatever to get that feature out. But you know that if you roll it out, it would really help in in the growth of your business or the value you provide to your customers. All right, so we have the feelings or maybe, which is the lower left. All right, in this quadrant are usually positioned as nice to have features. They like small improvements to interface one day, maybe ideas. Then we have the lower right, which is time sync features. Time sync are initiatives that we never want our team to be working on. All right. So you know that you're not you don't want your team working on this because it's low impact, all right, low low business, all right, low business, and has a high effort, all right. It take you a lot of time to work on it, and it has a very low. It doesn't give any value or anything. So why waste your time? All right. So what are the pros and the cons for this framework? Pros is that it allows quick prioritization and works well when the number of features is small. It can be shared across the whole startup team as it's easy to understand at a glance. Cons of this framework is if two product hypotheses are quick wins, which should you go for first? For this reason, it might be best framework. It might not be a best framework when there are a lot of features, as beware of feelings, as they can take much time and resources than expected, and create loss of focus. All right, especially when you have a lot of these feelings, the ones that have the ones that are nice to have. All right, you can just help you guys can find yourself losing focus on what is really important. All right, so next one we have here is the Kano method. All right, so this is developed by Japanese professor Noriako Kano and his team in 1984. The Kano model is a set of guidelines and techniques used to categorize and prioritize customer needs, guides product development, and improve customer satisfaction. The idea behind Kano model is that customer satisfaction depends on the level of functionality that a feature provides, how well a feature is implemented. All right. So the model contains two dimensions. Interesting. Okay, I knew something was wrong. All right. The model contains two dimensions. We have contains two dimensions. We have satisfaction, also seen as delight, excitement. So the interesting thing about Kano method is that, let me just break this down properly. The focus for Kano model is that it focuses on your customer satisfaction. That's the primary thing that determines the functionalities of your features. All right. So you're now looking on how we this particular thing satisfy our customers, or what level of satisfaction will we bring to our customers. All right. Or what level of delight, or how we this thing excite our customers. All right. So that goes to the total satisfaction. From total satisfaction, delighted, excited, to total dissatisfaction, frustration, or disgusted. All right. Functionality. Then we have the functionality. The first dimension is satisfaction. The second dimension is functionality. Functionality we're then looking at, also seen as the achievement, investment, sophistication, implementation that shows how well we've executed a given feature. It goes from what didn't do it at all, none, done poorly, to did it very well. All right. All right. So it goes from didn't do it at all, none, and done poorly, to did it very well. All right. Why do I keep duplicating this, guys? The slide was longer than usual. All right. So we have all right. So Kano classifies features into 4 broad categories depending on the customer's expectation or needs. Expected, must have. Expected, all right, must be, there must be, or the basic. All right. Some product features are simply expected. For example, being able to import your contact into CRM system. You must include these into your product requirements. And we have the normal, or performance. The more of these features we build, the more satisfied customer we get. Choose the right set of performance features to create an attractive product. All right. So these are the first 2 categories depending on customer expectations. All right. And we have exciting or attractive. Some unspoken features, when presented, could create a delightful customer experience. Pick a few of these from your customer feedback and implement them for complete differentiation. Then we have indifferent. The presence or the absence of this feature doesn't impact your customer value. Right. So these are the 4 categories you look at: expected, normal, exciting, and indifferent. All right. So this is how the quadrant looks like. We have the didn't do it at all, did it very well in terms of functionality, and we have the satisfaction, which is delighted, delighters, exciters. I will explain this on the next slide. Satisfiers, most dissatisfiers, expected quality, and all of that. So we'll go back to this when I explain this next slide. So this is an example now. Let's take a restaurant business for an example now. All right. An expected or basic need is that the restaurant is clean, delivers the food on time. This is expected. This is basic. For every restaurant, you should expect that it is clean. In fact, expected is that the food tastes good as well. All right, expected. Okay, let's say no. Let's go to tastes good is normal. All right, expected is that it's expected to be clean and delivers the food on time. Without this, customer will be dissatisfied. Okay, so even if that's true. So even if the food is tasty, if where you're cooking is unclean and you deliver very late, customer will be dissatisfied. All right, and we have the normal at the performance, which is required is that the food in that restaurant is tasty. All right, this is performance. This is normal that every food in that restaurant should be tasty. All right, an exciting or attractive requirement is that restaurants offer an extra free meal with your order. Maybe if you order after your 3 orders, you get an extra meal after 3 orders. That is attractive. That is exciting. All right. No, I'll come to your guys' questions at the end of the class. All right. And in different needs, and different needs is that the restaurant is using a proprietary POS terminal. All right. Nobody cares that you're using either what's it called, money points or what's the other one? Or OPay POS terminal for you to collect your money. That's nobody cares about that. All right. So the Kano model is useful when you are prioritizing product features based on the customer perception of value. All right. So to determine what your customer perception of your product, you must ask them a set of questions for each of the features they use. All right. Another interesting about Kano model is because you might even have to find yourself prioritizing features that you've already built out, you've already launched. All right, to know whether you be sunsetting any feature or you leave some features, because you might probably have prioritized pretty well. This is a use case that usually happens. You guys get this. You might have even done your prioritization and you've launched features, right? Then when your customer started using these features, right, you then want to then that's when you might want to run a Kano model to see how satisfied he is with each of all of these features. To then know which features you might want to improve on or which feature you might want to take out. So if a feature is not being used or people are not, it doesn't fall under, your customers are indifferent about that feature. All right, they really go there. They really, the percentage of customers that even just use that feature is insignificant. All right, that's feature that you might want to sunset. All right, you might have thought it is really important in the get-go. In fact, after you've done your other prioritization, but when you see how the perception of value customer has over it or how they engage that feature, you might just want to sunset. Sunset means you are taking it out. All right. So you want to ask a set of questions for each of the features they use. If they had features, if you had this feature, so questions like, if you had this feature, how do you feel? If you didn't have this feature, how do you feel? And you will have answers with these 5 options. I like it, I expect it, I'm neutral, I can't tolerate it, I dislike it. All right, so you can this help you to know how the perception your customers have regarding a certain feature. And this might also be useful when you are doing you're testing your prototype as well. All right. You've already prioritized, you've run your this thing, so you might want to prioritize the feature that you eventually build after you've done your prototype. Right. So just test the customer perception. Of course, you build the prototype, customer can engage, they can interact with the prototype. So use a Kano model to then prioritize which one you would then develop first based on their based on their feedback. All right. So this can be you can run a Kano model when you are doing your usability maybe with your focus group, when you are testing your prototype with your users. All right. So what's the pros and the cons for this model? Because the model differentiates between basic needs and features that can delight customers, it prioritizes more customer-focused products and services. So there are some okay. So this is not the interesting part. There are some features that are important that customers don't know that they are important. For example, security, encryptions and things like that. It might not make sense. All of those things might not make sense to customer, but it's really important to them. So that's in fact I don't even think it's pros. That is literally cons in a sense. All right, but so the cons says categorization of features into Kano categories is subjective, leading to inconsistency. It doesn't directly address other crucial aspects like cost, time to market, visibility, which can also significantly impact product success. You see that. So it doesn't it doesn't put into perspective the cost, the time to market, visibility, and all of that. So yeah, so those are the pros and the cons for Kano method. All right. Like I said, sometimes it's just a matter of context that determines which is the best or which of the right prioritization method you want to use. All right. So lastly, we have the weighted scoring prioritization. We have the weighted scoring prioritization is another framework that helps you decide what to put on your product roadmap. All right. This prioritization score is weighted aggregation of drivers that are used to quantify the importance of a feature. It's calculated using weighted average of each feature score across all drivers, which can serve to represent any prioritization criteria you would like. So your drivers can represent any prioritization criteria you want to focus on. All right. Weight given to each drivers out of a total of 100% determines the driver's relative contribution to the final score. All right, let me break this down. All right, so the process starts by selecting the drivers. These are criteria you'll be using to rate the feature. For example, you might select the user experience, sales value, strategic impact, user adoption, any of the acquisitions, activations, retention, referral, and revenue metrics. All right, so there is a metric called the AARR, which is acquisition, activation, retention, referral, and revenue metrics. All right, so these are the things that you consider to weight the feature that you want to put out. So next, you need to decide what importance you give to each drivers or category, adding a percentage value to each criterion up to 100%. For example, during the early stage, all right, you might focus on UX features that makes an MVP usable. All right, each feature will have score in those categories from 1 to which is minimum to 100, which is the maximum impact. Okay, and this can now calculate the final score for each feature. All right, so how do you then go about this weighted scoring prioritization? Start with a clear strategic overview of what your product release. What's your next product release? Compile a list of product features that are related to that release. You don't want to score every single feature in your backlog. All right. So compile a list of product features that are related to that release. So first of all, you have a strategic overview of your next release. What do you want to put on this next product release? Then list the features that you want to put in that release. All right. Then identify and group only the most relevant feature that for that release theme. All right. So define the scoring criteria, assign weights to each drivers, and come up with a list of drivers, parameters, and decide the importance by giving each driver a specific weight from 0% to 100%, making sure all stakeholders agree with each criterion. All right, so go through each feature and assign a score from 0 to 100 for each driver. The higher the score, the higher the impact that feature has on that driver. Right, so this is an example of how a weighted scoring prioritization looks like. All right, so let's say the category, right? All right, the category you're looking at. All right, so category. These are the all right. You will have the categories, the criterion, which is could be your customer engagement, it could be your user experience, sales funnel, operational efficiency. So what are the weights you want to give for that feature? All right, you look at without 20%. This is in terms of customer engagement, the impact or the weight of this is 20%. In terms of user experience, 10%. In terms of sales funnel, in terms of how we really bring in sales, 30%. In terms of operational efficiency, 40%. Then what's the total score? All right. So you have to first of all determine what criteria do you want to weight each feature based on. All right. So you might then want to so you then look at then we have the monthly reports and else. Okay, so these are features you're looking at. For example, monthly reports, you're giving the score for it. Health monitor, you're looking at you're weighing this thing, and you then have the total for each. All right. So so this is for each feature score is multiplied by the driver's weight. All right. Then added to the total priority score. All right. So we already said that the weight for customer engagement is 20%. The weight for user experience is 10%. The weight for 30 for sales is 30. And you already have your weight. All right. Then for each of those features, you then want to start scoring them. All right. You score them based on for each of the features. So what you then do is then you times each of the score with for times the score by the weight. All right. Then you then add them together. For example, now let's see the 90% times 20% times 50% times 90 times 10%, 50 times 30%, 20 times 40%. So you get your total priority. All right. So that's the approach to this weighted scoring prioritization. But the beauty about this is let's go to the pros and cons so you guys can see it. All right. The pros for using this framework is that it's customizable, which allows you to utilize the framework throughout your organization lifetime. All right. So you can use it across several metrics that are important to you. So this one is even very, very interesting because now you're now scoring it based on the metrics that or the criterion that that you think you guys are trying to achieve, for your business or at the stage of your product. All right. So, but the cons is that sometimes the weighted percentages can be hard to decide on. It requires PMMs and PMs to understand how each features will influence user adoption across the whole product ecosystem. All right. So you must really have a very um, long time view of your product to be able to decide, you know, decide the scoring or the weighting for each of the for each of the weighting for the criteria that you're looking at and the scoring for each of those features. All right, so that's the end for. So like I said, there are more and I would advise that you guys look up all of this prioritization techniques that exist in product management. There are more, like I said, they're up to like, if not be close to 10. There are a lot of it. So it helps you determine which the best ones to use based on the context or based on the based on the context, based on the stage you are in your product development and all of that. All right. So so that's the end of this lesson. So let's look at the questions you guys have. Before I read the questions on the chat, let me have you guys ask two people ask questions. They can unmute and ask you questions.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
And thank you for the class. Please, I want to ask on this last model that we just discussed about. So how do we determine the score to assign to each driver? Is there any way of determining how to, like, because if you are supposed to assign them by our own, it will be like sentimental from our own judgment. So I'll just my question: if there's any scientific method of assigning score?
So come again with your question. I didn't get that. How do
we assign scores to concerning the last model, the weighting model? How do we assign scores to each driver?
All right. So like I said here, it's a collective things that everyone look at to determine what score you want to give to each driver. All right. You look at it based on the impact that feature will have for that based on that driver. All right. For example, now let's look at the sample I use. Let's say health monitor. You're building a health app, right? And there's an health monitoring feature there. All right. You already determine the weight for each of that or each of your criterion already now. Right. So at that point when you're looking at the score, you're not even considering the weight any longer. You're just looking at what is the score you want to give to what's the score for you want to give for health monitor. All right. For example, now let's even break it down. Customer engagement. With this engage the customer, helping engaging the customer in a certain way. All right. So you're the one that would then determine that, in terms of from the ratio of 10 to 10. So this is why you need to understand what is the impact of this feature based on that criterion. So you might want to look at user experience. All right. This customer health monitor, does it improve the user experience in a certain way? All right. You look at it again, does it bring sales? Does it help in bringing sales or no, and things like that? So it's a thing that your team needs to just totally agree on. I don't think there's a certain calculation that you can determine what the exact score. You guys will be the one to come up with the score that you think is appropriate for that driver. All right. Did you get that? Okay. All right.
I have a question.
All right. What's your question?
Okay, so what if you're really employed in a company and they already have set methods that they make use of for prioritization? Maybe I've started making use of the ones that are available to you. It's still not giving you like a clear picture of what to prioritize first. How do you handle that? Is it wise to do employ other methods and then explain to the stakeholders why you did so?
Correct.
Or
Brilliant. So if that prioritization technique you're using, it still doesn't not giving you what you need in terms of aligning with, help you prioritization based on like I said, there are several contexts that determine the approach you use, right? So, and if you think a particular prioritization framework would help you get to achieve what you want to achieve in terms of, you know, prioritizing your features, you can deploy that and make a case for it with the stakeholders or with the management, and if you're able to convince them and all of that, and yeah, it's good. So like I said, there is no one shoe fits all for in terms of prioritization. Like, and I mentioned it earlier that you might find yourself using even more than one more than one framework, right? Just so that you get to a point where you are very confident about the you know the prioritization of your app, and like I said, and I mentioned from the get-go, right? You have to know what is really important for your organization at that period of time. What is important, you know, um, how much value is this feature bringing, all right? How much impact does it have on the customer, in terms of achieving the outcome, the major outcome that the customer wants to achieve, and things like that. And 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 yes, and they also want to consider your team, all right, the efforts, the resources, and all of that. So you might want to consider a lot of things. Like I said, context will help you determine what's the best. The reality of your organization or your team will help you determine the best approach you would want to use, and the future that you're trying to build will also help you look at, okay, what's the best possible um, prioritization technique should we use? All right, you might have even use the Moscow, and you realize that no, this within that thing within this Moscow doesn't help us consider, and you want to consider because Moscow was mostly just focusing on on the impacts or the value of the features. But now you want to consider your efforts. You want to consider the how long it will take you to build that product. So you might want to consider either the what's it called now, the the value versus complexity framework, or even use the RISE framework, because you want to get yeah, you want to get insight on what it will cost you your team to how much, or it will cost your team um to bring that feature out. All right. So those are the things that you might want to look at. Like I said, context matter a lot, and what are you trying to achieve. So that's what you look at. All right. So let me now answer the ones we have on the chat. 1 second, guys. Okay, so I have here, how do we know the reach when using RISE method, since we don't have a product already? How do we know the reach? All right. And are we to use an MVP prototype to determine the reach? All right. So you can determine reach based on how will I put it, just evaluating where you can use a prototype or a test, for example, now when you're using your survey, right? A survey could also help you to determine the reach, number of people that most likely would be impacted by this feature. All right. And again, when you are also running your personas as well, it will also help you determine what category of users would most likely use this feature. All right. And when you then look at the market you're serving, you're looking at, okay, in this market, we have more of these personas in this market. That would also help you determine your reach as well. All right. So those are things that you can use to determine, your reach. You can also test run with a prototype. That's fine, and or even look at the market that you're serving. All right, and this market segment, the number of people that fall into a particular segment that is meant to use a particular feature. All right, that could also be an approach that you can use to determine your reach. All right, so I hope that answers your question. So what this person, is it possible for the confidence to be high and still the product failed to be a hit? My brother, it's possible. It's very, very possible. All right. Like I mentioned, yeah, it's very, very possible because the market can be very dynamic, right? There is, which is why when in product management, there's that point where you want to quickly launch. When you prioritize, you really want to validate, because prioritization doesn't mean that a feature has been fully validated. All right, because most of everything is still based on estimates, on on valuation, not validation. Valuation, all right, based on data and all of that. But validation is when you put it out and you see engagement. That can help you know whether to again validate how how well the feature does on things. But you might think that it will do well and it will not, which is where the Kano then comes in, when you are now seeing how people are impacted, how the perception or the value it then gives, with the user, when you start asking them those questions that I spoke about for the Kano approach. Then you don't want to then do the prioritization to know which features you want to leave, which feature do you want to improve on, which feature do you want to sunset. All right. So like I said, there are several stages. So there are several stages that you would 1 minute. So there are several stages, right? Several stages that you might find yourself that you might want to approach it with a different prioritization framework. All right. Okay, so next question says, how do we handle stakeholder disagreement when categorizing feature using Moscow? Oh, so how do we handle stakeholders disagreement? All right. For this one, yeah, it's all about coming with data, right? Coming with data to back up whatever where you are prioritizing and I think one that gives you more data is using the right framework, right? So you might be using Moscow, but it's being able to also convince the stakeholders on how much of value or how well it will help you achieve your overall business goal. All right. So if you can able to convince them to see that, and that's good. But if for some reason they're not seeing it in the light that you're saying it, you might want to I don't know, maybe look for another approach to convince them. But as the product manager, right, yours is to ensure that your decisions are data-based, are based on the data and not just nudges, because you might be thinking you are right, and the stakeholders are able to convince you because you're a team. So someone might be able to convince you in seeing the impact or the value of a particular feature, which is why prioritization is not something you do in silos. You do it as a team. All right. You want to get all of your team on board, at least the main stakeholders or the lead of each team, to look at all of these features and before you prioritize. All right. What prioritization model would you not recommend for product at MVP development stage? Product at MVP. Which one will I not recommend? I don't think there's any that I won't recommend, to be honest. I don't think there's any, because if you're in your MVP stage, question is not have you launched with your MVP. So what's the MVP development stage? Okay, for MVP development stage, I wouldn't advise you use your Kano, because you're still developing, so there's really nothing to test the satisfaction. All right. So if you don't have anything to prototype to engage your customer to know how they are satisfied with a particular feature, Kano might not work. Which other one do I think? So yeah, I think it's only Kano that I think might not work when you're still in development phase. Weighted prioritization still works. Scoring still works. Value versus complexity still works. Moscow still works. Rice works. Yeah. Next question says, how do you want select which one to choose when using more than one prioritization method when having more than one priority? I don't get how do you want select which one to choose, all right, when using more than one priority prioritization method, okay, when having more than one priority, okay, let's say more than one features, okay. So like I said, it's still seeing how well this help you align with your core, with your major criteria, which is why, in a sense, I think I most likely um, would combine weighted scoring with Moscow, all right, at some point, because now weighted scoring help you then look at the drivers that are important for you, right? Because you have to look at these drivers. For example, your customer engagement, user experience, um, 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 you want to look at the sales value, the how well this a particular feature will bring you or initiative. For example, now maybe you want to develop a referral model, a referral feature into your app. A referral feature would help you with a referral feature will help you with a referral feature would help you with user adoption, right? User activation, right? So it depends on what stage you are in your product, all right? If you're in the phase where you just launched, some criteria, some metrics will be important to you, like getting more users, all right? So it means that you are building features that would help you in for example, now you want to put out feature that would help you, gain more users. All right, you already have your core functionalities and all of that, but you need to increase your users. So it means that you have to consider features that would help you bring more users. You're looking at features like referral. You're looking at features like features that maybe um features that help in giving I don't know, maybe like you know um but I don't know how to put it now. Is it bonus option or something? I don't know how to put it now. Or extra that helps people to use more features or something like that. It depends on what you're trying to achieve anyway. Because I'm trying to think of a context right now, but nothing is coming to my head. So yeah, so it depends on what criterion that are made that are important to you. So I'll most likely say you want to look at the weighted options, then you want to look at the Moscow. All right. Especially if you are just and if you're already a small team and you're just looking to look at the most impactful features that you need to put out that would help you guys, you know, first of all, you're looking at help your customers achieve what they want to achieve, the outcome, right? So, like for example, now if you are building for if you are building for which why Moscow is very important. So, example, now if you are building for you're building an app that helps you to select the best restaurant. All right. First of all, that one of the things you need in your app is being able to ability to find the restaurant that are close by. If that feature is not there, you don't have an app. Do you understand? So those are things that you look at that helps you determine the right frameworks to use and where you are at the stage of your product life cycle. All right. So what other question do we have? So how do one select which? Okay, I already answered that question. All right, I think that's pretty much all of the questions I have here. I believe everyone has been able to mark their attendance, right? Because I know the session has been on from the beginning of this class.
Please, sir, I don't. How do we mark? Should we go to our dashboard?
Yeah, go to your platform. Have you not marked your? Can someone put that through? Just tag the class rep that would help you out with your attendance. Has anyone else marked their attendance?
I don't know who is our class.